Just for the record, I may come up dry. You know I have issues peeing in public. Nothing's happening.
Shy bladder is a common psychological condition. Studies show if you focus on something else, you'll be able to urinate. Singing works well. Let the music flow, Rue, and the urine will follow.
And I'll never be set free as long as I'm a ghost you can't see.
There you go, pal. Liquid gold.
As my brother said, what the heck is this? Oh my God. You guys. So FUBAR. I recently spent several days with my brothers up in New Jersey, and we had saved FUBAR for when we were going to be together so we could all watch it. It's going to be fun. I have so many thoughts about this show. Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, the opening clip and my reaction is how I feel about this entire show. Now, you guys know how much I love Arnold. So none of the complaints that I'm going to have in here are specifically about him. But, oh my goodness, I really don't have a lot of good things to say about this show, unfortunately. And I hate that because, let me start off with just the pro aspect of this. FUBAR was written by Nick Santora, who wrote things, created things like The Sopranos and Reacher, which I really enjoyed Reacher, and several other well-known productions. And he wrote the first episode of FUBAR and the last episode of FUBAR. And out of all of the episodes, which there were 8 in total, those 2 were probably the stronger ones. That's not saying a ton. I mean, the first episode was decent. The last episode and the way it wrapped things up was, okay. But the stuff in between was a big mess. And it just surprises me that this is something that came from a writer that has given us productions with historically solid quality. This just feels like such a wasted opportunity. I will start off with the pros. So the pros are, some aspects of this show were interesting. I like the relationship. Oh, okay. Let me give you the premise if you don't know already. And I am going to delve into spoilers. So if you don't know the premise already and I'm telling it to you, that means you haven't seen this yet. If you care about spoilers, you might want to skip this until you've seen it. The premise of the story is Arnold is a CIA guy and his daughter is a CIA chick, but neither one of them know that the other one works for the CIA. The premise, it's interesting, but obviously ludicrous, okay? In reality, I don't think anything like that would ever really be a thing, but whatever. That's the premise. They each find out what the other one does in the first episode, and then they are put in this situation where they have to work together. And they both have a bunch of issues working with each other. The daughter holds a lot of resentment and hostility. Like, she loves her dad, but when she finds out the truth, she has a lot of anger and hostility about the fact that he lied to the family for so long. Never mind the fact that she's been lying to the family too with her work, so okay, whatever. So they're put in this situation where they have to work together because it's all about this job that they're both working on. They are put together as partners, but during the midst of all that, they have to work through all their conflicts and they have to go to therapy. And so there's this friction between them as they sort through everything. And they each have a little bit to learn about what the other can offer and stuff like that. So it was an interesting premise. Something else that I felt like was interesting and probably the strongest aspect of this entire show was the relationship between Arnold's character and the character played by Gabriel Luna. His name is Boro. Gabriel Luna was the son of this guy, this really bad guy that Arnold had killed on a mission, and because Arnold felt guilty about the fact that he took this kid's father away, he sort of stepped in as that's Boro right there. He sort of stepped in as a father figure to Boro. He helped him with his education, he sort of mentored him, and Boro grew up not knowing the truth about Arnold's character. Then eventually he finds out, and he finds out about the daughter being a CIA, and so he goes after both of them. And so that's the overarching storyline throughout all of the episodes, is this whole deal with Boro. And his relationship and Arnold's relationship was the best part about this show, because it dealt with pretty complex sort of things, like this guilt that Arnold felt and how he tried to do the best that he could by the kid that was left behind. And yet this kid turned into something as bad as or worse than his own father. And so now Arnold is pitted against him, and yet he still has these very complex feelings that tie him to Boro. So those were interesting aspects to this show. Something else that was interesting was when it delved into a situation that the daughter was put in. There was a mission that she had to carry out, which involved her behaving in a way that left her very conflicted about her real life relationship outside of the CIA, and I felt like that was handled pretty well, or it was just certainly something that brought a little bit more seriousness and weight to the subject matter in that particular episode. And I liked how also they did various callbacks to Arnold's previous movies, references to the chopper, and the post-sex scene from Twins, when Arnold's lying there beside Kelly Preston, I think that's her name, and also tying into his weightlifting background, because like a fitness store or something to do with weights is his cover business that he operates as a CIA agent. And some of the humor in here was kind of funny. Some of it. Most of it was not at all. So I'm going to jump from the few pros that I had into the cons of this show, of which there were many. Number one being, this felt like, despite the fact that this was written by someone with a decent track record, this felt like something that was cobbled together with little thought and with little care to quality. There was some of the worst writing in here that I think I've ever seen. Corny lines, clunky delivery of those lines. Some of the acting in here was awful. There's one particular character in here that's terrible. Well, two, one worse than the other. And the humor just did not land very well. It felt so stinking juvenile. This felt like something out of the worse than the CW. The romantic setups in here were ridiculous. I mean, it was like I was something out of high school with the way these people were talking and complaining, and their little love triangles, and then their little discussions with each other about the romance that was going on and the conflicts caused in the middle of an operation, and they're having these discussions. It was so ridiculous. And then that scene that you saw at the beginning where this guy was injured and they had to do some sort of procedure on him down in this tunnel, and she had to generate some liquid for the procedure, and of course liquid was pee, and then she couldn't pee because she couldn't pee in public, and so they came up with this whole idea of singing a song and getting her mind off of it, and then she sings a song with the guy and then she pees. And it was at that point, and that was like episode 7, I think, and I remember we were watching it. And my brother was on the couch. He was lying down on the couch. And this scene is happening with the singing. And he starts to kind of like raise up. And he was saying, "What the heck is this?" And we were just like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. So bad. The only reason we were watching this, you guys, was because of Arnold. He was the only draw. And we all were of the consensus that this was not very good. My brother Timothy felt like this is probably the worst, or maybe it was Matthew. Felt like this was the worst thing Arnold's been in since Hercules. And that's saying a lot because Arnold's been in some stinkers. But there was so much that was irrational and stupid about this show. The setups for the certain things that happened was silly. The anger that the daughter felt, it seemed to come out of left field in a lot of ways, and setting up certain scenes of dialogue or conflict between father and daughter felt really forced and shoehorned in, and it did not flow naturally or organically. It just felt like, okay, we need to have her mad, so let's put this thing in here and let's cobble this together. And it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like it was something that came from quality writing. It felt like something that came from crap writing, which is exactly what this was. There would also be moments like where these two characters, seasoned CIA officers, would have some of the most ridiculous lapses in judgment. They would be talking out loud about stuff, important stuff, around crowds of people where anybody could hear them, and some people did hear them. And the character of Arnold also, sometimes he'd be speaking out of two sides of his mouth. He was meddling in the relationship with his daughter. So he's trying to give advice to his daughter. Look, you don't want to make the same mistakes I did, because me keeping all these secrets from your mom, that's what ruined our marriage, and you don't want to do that. You really shouldn't be involved with this guy that you're involved with. You need to break it off. And then when some issues were happening in the relationship, then he's talking to the boyfriend and he's telling the boyfriend, you need to fight for her if you love her. And it was just like, but wait a second, you're telling the girl she needs to leave him, but now you're telling the boyfriend so that made no sense. And the daughter had some of the most idiotic behavior as well. The way she acted was extremely childish. I mean, she was supposed to be in her late 20s and she acted like a teenager sometimes. Her anger with her father was juvenile and just so stupid and so misplaced. And these little squabbles they would get into, like I said, in the middle of a freaking operation, they're fighting with each other about, you told so-and-so that I kissed somebody. Why did you tell him I kissed somebody? Well, you need to not do this, and you need to think about your relationship. It's like, you're in the middle of an operation. Why are you talking about these things? This is so stupid. So stupid. And then this scene with the chick that did the singing because she needed to pee in a jar. She's doing this stuff to help her friend because his lungs are filling up with fluid. And she did something to sanitize whatever. She said she sanitized something. I don't know. I just don't see how in the world she could have, because they're not even in a sanitary place. And she pees in this jar to do this thing to create a vacuum. And then when she's supposed to cut into him to put a tube in him, she doesn't even lift his shirt to cut into his skin. She just cuts him through the shirt. What the heck? What? There was just no thought, no consistent, logical, rational thought given to the writing in this show. This is an action comedy show. This felt primarily like a juvenile comedy show. This felt like something I can't even. I don't even know. I can't. I couldn't tell if this show was trying to take itself, well, yes, this show was trying to take itself seriously. But then it would do just terrible things and snap you right out of the moment of what was happening because of how idiotic and imbecilic the characters were acting. I couldn't get over what I was watching. I was disappointed because I expected better. And I like Monica Barbaro as an actor, but I kid you not, by the time this show was done, I was so annoyed with her because her character was so ridiculous. And the way she played the character was just, I mean, this was the material she was given. I guess she did the best she could with what she had. And can you believe it, you guys? This has been renewed for a second season. I don't know why. I guess because it was #1 for a while. It was pretty popular. Arnold's in it. He's the only reason this show was watched by pretty much anyone. But not even Arnold could save what was one of the worst productions from Netflix I've seen in a long time. Now, granted, I haven't watched everything that they've produced. It was so bad, it gave me goosebumps. That's how bad it was. And 2 of the worst parts of this show, 3, the stupid romance triangle, that was dumb. There was a romance triangle going on between Arnold's daughter, her fiance, and that guy, one of the other field agents. So that was just some dumb triangle happening. Then there was a triangle going on with Arnold and his ex-wife and her boyfriend. And it just felt like something so high schoolish. I just couldn't. So that was a ridiculous, like if you took out all of the times that they referenced and dealt with this love triangle crap that was going on, this show would have probably been maybe 4 episodes long and would have been much better for it. I like the premise of the whole setup with Boro. I like the premise of the fact that this father and daughter had to learn to work together, but the execution was awful. The writing was awful. And it hurts me to say this because I love Arnold, but I did not love this. The other terrible parts of this show were 2 of the actors. I'll try to point them out when it comes around to them. One was the chick that was peeing in the bottle. She was terrible. And that guy, him and her, they were some of the worst parts about this show. The way they were written was so clunky and lame, and the way they delivered their lines was terrible. Now, the guy was marginally better than the girl, but she's one of the worst actors I have ever seen. The delivery of lines was, you have to see it to believe how terrible it was. And I think with him, part of it was just obviously the material. His delivery was a little better, but still the storylines written around him were silly. Just silly. Could have done without it. So I don't have a lot more to say about this. I think I've gone through all my notes, but this was a pretty big disappointment. And I am surprised to see the rating that this has on IMDb is as high as 6.5. I could not go higher than a 5 on this. And that's only because, I mean, the rating I give it is because of Arnold and some of the other pros I mentioned. When season 2 comes around, will I watch it? Probably, just so I can bitch about how bad that one is too. I mean, I'll be surprised if season 2 ends up surprising all of us with how great it is. But usually, subsequent seasons aren't as strong as the first season. Sometimes that's not the case, but that's usually the case. So I'm not holding out hopes that season 2 is going to be all that good. That girl, she was terrible. She was just awful. It was so cringe. It was so cringe. And it's unfortunate. And I hate to have to be feeling this way about it, but I do. And I'm curious to know if you guys saw it. What did you think about it? Maybe I'm kind of alone in... No, I'm not alone in my disdain for it because my 2 brothers agree with me. But yeah, I just... Anyway. Okay. Little doggy that jumped out of my lap wants to get back in, which means I need to move the desk. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this to a close. I have nothing else to say about this. That's it, and that's all. Yeah, that was a catchphrase they kept saying, and that was just so lame. And they would say it when it just... Whatever. Okay, you guys.